talents that has. But in addition to actually leading the trip, he made arrangements to have a field vehicle that can get over the roads, but also a field vehicle that can carry liquid nitrogen tanks, plant presses, all the equipment we needed. He also made arrangements in his university at the State University of Bahia in Salvador for lab space in one of his colleagues' labs so we could isolate DNAs and RNAs. And there's Tracy, and then our postdoc project, Ensign Joy, who's now back in Korea. He was part of that trip. Anyway, in addition to his expertise in Palladium systematics, knowing basically all the plants that we wanted were growing in Brazil, he also took us to the beach. He introduced us to, well, I guess we were already familiar, obviously, with Shasha and beer. He actually were able to drink quite a bit of both. He took us to a festival. I can't remember the name of the festival. In Salvador. And he also, in addition to his mechanical talents, anyway, he plays instruments as well. He took us to a party, capoeira class, which is a form of martial arts that they do. So anyway, I didn't tell you that actually Domingos got his PhD in 2012 at the Federal University of Bahia, and now is an assistant professor at the State University at the Federal University of Bahia in Salvador. So it's really an extreme pleasure for us to introduce something forward.
And the first one from here.
Oh, I might mention that he is going to be here till June 22nd. Anybody would like to speak with him? No. All yours.
Thanks, Paul, for the great introduction. I was excited to get that memory right before the pandemic. I wish I was going to talk about the actual results from that project, from the stuff we do in writing systematics. But I'm going to talk today about this question I have been trying to struggle with and try to contribute with in Brazil, trying to describe, that's the challenge, to describe and catalog the Amazon plant species diversity. Basically, what I'm going to show here is this discussion on how many tree species we have in the Amazon. Might be it's a big question for the sake of as big as the size of the Amazon, it's a huge task. But there are some interesting debates out there and we can discuss. So, but first, let me tell you that my work background, I have spent much work in herbarium, trying to look at morphologically or phylogenetically plants. And here's one photograph that specimen in Kew Gardens in London when I was doing postdoc there. And this is a monopteryx species. This species was collected by Richard Spruce. He was one of the early naturalists who went to the Amazon and collected many interesting plants. And I was interested in that particularly because nobody had collected before other than Richard Spruce. So it's a very rare legume genus with interesting morphology. And I'm going to show you, just to give you a background, Richard Spruce, he met up with Wallace when Wallace was collecting information to understand evolution, right? They met up there in Rio Negro. This is a drawing by Wallace in 1852. This plant was collected December 1853. So what I basically want to do was I want to go in that area and try to find that grand record. So he went, just to tell you, in that same trip, when Richard first collect my plant of interest, he also collect and describe bunch of this type. I don't know if you're familiar with, but this species, the one people use, the Indians use, and nowadays very used for ayahuasca ritual. You know, so he collect that very specimen, and you can see here in the same trade. Oh, sorry. It's getting a delay.
And there's a delay, I think.
So, okay. So this is basically part of it's not a looks like a Monet painting, but is the view to the window where I was for 1 week trying to find that interesting legend. And here is the we got success after traveling on boats all over the Amazon, very remote areas. We got to find the monotheres. My trip was designed exactly the same period, December before the pandemic, December 19th, 2017. And here's how the flower looked like. So only us, only you and Spruce maybe had the chance to see, has now the chance to see how beautiful is this flower. So here how it looks like. I come from a very dry region. It's pretty much like Sonora Desert. I always had interest with the flora of the Amazon. Always attract my attention. These basins of rainforest that cover several countries, 9 countries in South America. And in the Amazon has attracted many, not just the early naturalists, but many tropical biologists. What we have progressed a lot on the understanding of how the Amazon biodiversity has been shaped both by historical process. This is a nice paper that summarizes the geological history, how the Andes could have impacted this Amazon diversification, both for plants and animals. It's a nice summary. Just to tell you, some trees in Amazon, they can be, what I've seen from molecular data is that many lineages, they are so young. Here, the genus Inga, more than 300 species, and the entire lineage just 6 million years old. That pattern, that has been a common pattern in rainforest radiation, particularly in the Amazon. And this is another paper that shows also how plants in the Amazon, they are particularly interesting. Just like that genus Inga in Kashigali, they have a demographic rate and turnover. That's very small turnover. So these trees, they somehow behave, their turnover behaves pretty much as a herd, as compared with herd plants. But they are, but those are trees. So while we have progressed quite a lot on understanding both ecological process and speciation in the Amazon, we have, that is a basic question. We've still been struggling. How many tree species? I would like to know the name of those species, right? That's we can with knowing those plants. It's a basic question. We can expand on many other questions, evolutionary biology, many questions down the line. And so, what is going on? Sorry, don't know why. Okay, so here one way to, sorry, I don't know what this. Okay, one way to, maybe I should use it here. One way to answer that question was published in 2013 in this science paper by Terstegi et al. This is an estimate of how many tree species we could have in the Amazon. It's an ecological estimate using rank abundance curves and that network of plots, 1 hectare plots all over the Amazon. They estimate that the Amazon could have about 16,000 species of trees. And the interesting pattern from this paper is that more just a few species in the oligarchy of 227 will be hyperdominant. So you see these vastness of forest, those could be inhabited only by a couple species because they are so abundant. There are billions of trees, okay? And the majority of species in the Amazon, they will be so rare, will not have more than 1,000 trees. That's an estimate, right? And here, which are these hyperdominant trees, the para-rubber tree, for example. A legume is also among the most dominant, and acai, Euterpe habilis, okay, one of the largest, most diverse. But the Indians also said that the forest has more eyes than leaves, okay? That's interesting. We can also use GPIF. Is one way to estimate how many species we have already described. So this is an accumulation curve of how many specimens we have described for the entire region of the Amazon. So Ter Stegen in 2016 published this paper in Nature Scientific Reports and comes with that title. Here, an update checklist of all known tree taxa in the Amazon. So they use the GBIF to provide us an update checklist. And they came out with 11,676 species of trees and more than 1,000 genera. One thing that we should be careful, and I was, when I saw that paper, when that paper came out, is that most of the available collections, many of you that are used to work on with collections, you know that many things out there, either in the herbarium, either in animal collections, they are outdated for many groups. And this paper here shows that 50% of tropical species on average, they are incorrectly named. So we should be careful with that. So is there another way to give that answer? How many tree species? Because when I look at that paper, I'm going to show you some more details about that paper. But first, let me show what we do in our lab. I think for that task, I think we need field work. We need to put our boots on the ground, and that's what I've been doing in the Amazon. Here how my lab looks like. So my focus Bob has told before, my focus is on legume systematics. Like I want to understand flora evolution and do taxonomy because legumes are so diverse in the Amazon. So that's a good, important family to work with, and so big family, so diverse too. Here is out of a field work. That's a monotypic genus in legume, okay, called Petaladenium. Was also very rare, collected by Duque in the beginning of the last century, and we got success to find it in the Curicuriari. In the same trip, I got across the second collection of Marsdania spruceae, another one that Richard Spruce collected in the Amazon, and here the second collection. And this is Aguiara Celsa bombacoi, was very rare tree too. We didn't have any data for it yet. And here another expedition trying to reach another phylogenetically enigmatic legume, papillonoid, Ulanthus erythinoides in the Pará River. So sometimes we are lucky to get to see those big trees, just like they naturally saw in their early field trip. That's Islania, that beautiful buttresses. We always come across beautiful sunset in those field work, and we collect a lot of beautiful smiles. So I integrate field work with spending much time in herbarium to describe these plants. And here an example of a plant that was collected in Panama in 1863 and was said there as still undescribed species. So we've been doing that. So trying fulfilling the taxonomic gap, the linear gap, or shortfall. We are also trying to fill in the Darwinian shortfall, the gaps in phylogenetic knowledge for these plants. So for those plants I showed you, we already have submitted a paper on that monopteryx. So here another one on the Petroladeno I published before. So we fill that gap in. Aldina was also another enigmatic genus in Papilionoid. And okay, but let's go back to the question. So I'm gonna show you how we can integrate the knowledge of the plants themselves with what I call taxonomically verified or taxonomic vetted analysis of specimens. So or taxonomic verified database. Flora do Brazil 2020 is an effort by more than 700 taxonomies. All that knowledge is in there and updated. All the synonyms, all names, and we can, so what we have done in this paper here, published 2017, me and my colleague, we led that paper, me and Tina Sarkman, because we were, we wanted to confirm, to challenge the other list that Thursday et al. Published, pulling out automatically all data from GBF. And we came with a different number. So the Amazon would not have more than 6,700 species in our checklist. It's a big contrast. And how can we explain this discrepancy, right? So first of all, we use what I call biologically meaningful definition of the Amazonian rainforest biome. In that list, they use a polygon, a complete polygon of what would be the Amazon, and everything inside would be part of the checklist. So we decide to use only what we see as the proper Amazonian rainforest biome. For example, that means, do you think this is Amazonian rainforest? This is a patch of rainforest of dry forest, savanna, fire prone vegetation inside the Amazon. And this kind of vegetation of biome, they are widespread. They cover a large area. If you don't take apart if you don't use this biome drive-driven concept, you'd be generating a list for a geographical area, pretty much, and not a biological meaningful checklist for the information you need. So by doing that, we also reviewed 55 plant families, almost all their names, and we found that 40% of their names were mistakes, were completely mistakes. And I'm going to show you some of the most obvious mistakes. Okay, for example, more 2,700 species were demonstrably from different biomes. This is Brazilian, Pau Brasilia, Echinata de Brasil. It's endemic to the rainforest, to the Atlantic rainforest, but it was listed as if it was an Amazonian species in third checklist. So, and we found all those names. They also listed Nothofagus, Notophagaceae, as an Amazonian species and family in that checklist. They also list all these species you see, Amburana. These are all species endemic to the Caatinga dry forest biome in the northeastern Brazil. They are definitely not Amazonian tree taxa, okay? And they list many synonyms. You know that Myrtaceae is such a complex group. If you work well on the tropics, Myrtaceae is like, you gotta be careful because sometimes you can have many synonyms, you're playing with many synonyms, and they listed all the 24 different synonyms of Myrtaceae planets in that checklist. So this is just for one example of taxa with lots of basionym. So they list lots of herbs too. So not just tree taxa. And in their checklist, Solana cicotta was found as the most one of the top 10 richest genera, okay, of the Amazon. But these are The most are in trees, but these are essentially shrub and herbaceous. In our list, we found Schwartzia and Inga as the most diverse genera, together with Chrysa ballonacea, Melasomatae, so much more our expectation. Don't be surprised. They also found they include a lot of old world species not native to the tropics, but as if they were from the Amazon too. And for example, Bachelor nilotica is an African species. They also listed Acacia podalifolia from Australia as an Amazonian tree. Okay. Magnolia, I saw cultivated in the neighbor's backyard, right? Magnolia grandiflora. So what I wanted to question is that the same level of error in plants, in the checklist they had, can lead to so many misleading understanding of the Amazon if we are using such a bad checklist. People that don't know, it's gonna be complicated for conservation efforts, not just for questions in evolutionary biology. So it's the same as if imagine if you were building a checklist for mammals, for Amazonian mammals, and we have, in addition to list the puma, we listed llamas, we have listed kangaroos and elephants. So it gets too complicated, right? Okay, I share the opinion of Stephen Hubble that perhaps we need to set that question of how many species we have. We might need to set aside because perhaps we don't have money, we don't have enough data yet. It is at least what I want to show is that if you wanted to answer that question, what we know now and where should we go to find those data? And I want to show that taxonomically verified. And nowadays, when I say taxonomically verified, means also brings together all the evolutionary understanding too of the taxa we are playing with. So but looks like for we've been putting priorities in different things. Not maybe we are spending data in for projects that perhaps will not be helpful for the task of documenting the Amazonian rainforest biodiversity. And let me show these 3 slides. Between 1995 and 2014, Brazil was going very well in many aspects, many of our socioeconomic and environmental programs. As you can see here, we had a lot of investment in science financial funding, and we were already conducting Amazonian deforestation and also Amazon rainforest deforestation. But then since 2015, all these positive trends were reversing that. And we have, I'm sure you are aware, we have been both with political crisis in Brazil. We have a president that was impeached. And after that, our democracy was impacted highly. In my talk, as I said, I start all my studies here in 2012 when I went to the college. So I got a lot of investment, and nowadays I have been struggling to do research there in Brazil, and it's been very complicated for us because of those the lack of investments currently. And when you go, you've been seeing that Amazon has been impacted by fire and the current government, and that situation has been much more complex nowadays in Brazil. And this picture here perhaps shows one of the major impact of in the Amazonian frontier with central Brazil. So a soybean field, all these plants have been impacting and deforesting quite a lot of native areas. So we've been burning biodiversity without knowing their names, without knowing where they are placed in the tree of life. And I hope that we can get our democracy back in Brazil over this year, and together we are going to be able to get a better answer of the Amazon biodiversity. But currently, those are the numbers we had thus far. I would like to thank all my sponsors on the university. I would like to thank thanks Paul and Tracy for the invitation. I also thank our side project NSF, because this is all the stuff I do is also part of keep my my lab very productive too. So yeah, now I'm open to questions.
Questions, man?
As an ecological question, I would be interested in the species density. So, for example, I work on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica, and that's about 400 square kilometers. It has 700 species of trees, depending on how you want to look at shrubs versus trees. But it's roughly 600 to 700 species of 400 square kilometers. My question is whether that species density would be the same if you took a 400 square kilometer patch of Arizona. How many would be there?
4 kilometers square.
400.
400.
That's it's about
I know in those plots, 1 hectare, 100 meter plus 100 by 100 feet. And you
that's
have
like 4,000 hectares. 40,000 hectares. I think.
so then we have in those plots 1 hectare plot, 500 species, 3 species, with those 3 species. Now it depends. In the Atlantic forest, you can get much higher diverse in the Atlantic coastal forest. The Amazon, that pattern actually found in the 2017 paper estimated using plot information plots. They estimated, but I've seen people have created some critics on the use of both of Fisher's alpha parametric model to estimate biodiversity across such a highly heterogeneous landscape like the Amazon. I think there is a paper published by Robert Rickles. He used the native for North America in the same approach, Fisher's alpha, and found much higher number of species compared with what we had. And here is the flora is more well described than the one in the Amazon. So I think we are at least they give us some estimates, but they are not much realistic. I mean, my perspective, seeing all these.
Well, the interesting thing is if we start with a small plot, then the accumulation comes.
Yeah.
You get a bigger thing.
But when the landscape is so heterogeneous,
Right. That's yes, and yeah, it's the there's so much possibility that the rare species are existing in a small patch. Because they're supported by the source population.
Yeah.
And that's where the image it's interesting to understand what would be the limit of packing this species in.
The previous TOC paper, did they use rarefaction to estimate if you were to add additional plots in the Amazon, how many new species you would?
For the 2000. We might have 16,000 species in there. 16,000. But we might have our data, our list, what we have described so far, is not closer to that yet. Not even closer, but maybe the Amazon has so. My debate here is that I was not. He also, those guys, they group misunderstood a little bit how my base. I didn't want to question that the Amazon never had house 16,000 species of trees, but we were questioning which we have already, how many we have already described there, and here the way you should harvest the information to mine. There is more this taxonomically verified database. And, we might have in this after we publish that paper, we have added quite a lot of new species from the Amazon. The concept described. Okay.
So for many years, the Amazon was considered to be so vast in size that conservationists tend to treat the whole thing as one unit. It's been shrinking so rapidly that we're moving to the point now where people need to start prioritizing conservation within the Amazon region as a whole. Do you think that the data that you're assembling, which is essentially derived from specimen point data, will provide a framework that might help conservationists to prioritize conservation or to suggest an amount of acreage or where the hotspots
It's going to be helpful. And people there in Brazil, the programs, they've been integrating more the taxonomy. So using we have that Florida Brazil infrastructure, at least in county level. But to tackle the Amazon problem, it has to be a multinational enterprise, right? But in Brazil, they've been more using data from Florida Brazil, and Florida Brazil has many other things that are help for identification too, and also we tell apart the different habitats as well, that database. So we can definitely pull out the data for not just for the Amazon, but for the different types of habitats we have in the Amazon, which is very helpful. And that absolutely can help us to also direct the priorities for conservation. Personally, I think the first priority for conservation in Amazon is a political problem, it's a presidential problem. As a binomial. This binomial is called Jair Bolsonaro. But that's my personal opinion. If we can, that would help us, please.
I was wondering, you mentioned earlier problems with including species from Australia and Africa.
How we have?
I was wondering is there a point when you think invasive or non-native species could be included after being integrated into the ecosystem for a certain period of time? Or do you think that only native species are in there prior to more invasive?
The Brazilian flora is also a checklist of everything that occurs in Brazil, inclusive the non-native trees. So you can pull out all the data from the native Amazonian in the non-native species that are in the Amazon. Our question was we wanted to focus on how many tree species are truly Amazonian. Okay, that's why, but absolutely, I think we need, a checklist for the area, non-native, is also important, but we need to know, right? They gave us just a checklist of supposedly to be Amazonian tree species and updated. So that was I thought was not fair. We should, let's go into the debate, Father. And sometimes those trees, they are not because they appear there because they show in their checklist, not because they are only because they are no native. Sometimes imagine you can collect a specimen in a roadside, okay, that is cultivated or in a backyard, you put the specimen nearby, and then this data will show up there in GPRF as it was collected in the Amazon. Just like, and if you don't know the names, if you just mine the data based on the geographical polygon, automatically this all those stuff. You can easily arrive with that tour checklist, including everything. I think that was maybe the reason how they got so many mistakes.
So here's the problem I see is that the folks like you that are focused on one higher taxonomic group like the Williams, they have a chance to get a good estimate for the Amazon in your life. But now you have the malpighiaceae, you have you have all these other tree families.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And so one possible way is to extrapolate. If you have some idea of in a well-census area of what your taxon is of the total flora, and you have everything else well-census, and now you can extrapolate from those ratios to areas where you can census your taxon, but not the others. And you can maybe get an estimate of those other species densities without having to identify everything. If your question is how many species?
Yeah, that's one possibility. But I got into this debate because I want not just to answer the question, I want to know who are these trees, right? Who are these trees? You are somehow walking the Amazon, we see. For me, it's like a paradox going down. If we see a huge mammal or huge fossil dinosaur, we get into a describe. We are for the Amazonian plains, we are crossing to all these giants, and for many of them, we don't even have a name, or we are misapplying the name, So I care quite a lot with the names, and I wanna know, even though if I wanna know if it's different or not, and then, that was my first feeling on that debate was because okay, I wanna know which are thus far of this one, and of course we can give an answer to the how many tree species question from taxonomy perspective. I think we should also have, because they start on that question by not just estimating, it's with an estimation with the 2032 page. I think much clarity they were estimating. It's good. I think it's an important question. It's important process to estimate. But when you get okay, here the update checklist for all normal, then we are stepping on we are going to a direction where the identity, the species identity matters, right?
So we've got 3 big forest geoplots that are 25 hectares in Brazil, Ecuador, Colombia. And then there's a network of rainforest plots. I don't know, I'm not as familiar with the methodology.
Yeah,
They're smaller. So.
This small, 1 hectare, Oliver Village, right?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the problem with any of those plot networks though is that whoever identifies species in some plot over here in the central Amazon, someone else is identifying species over here in Ecuador, and they're calling what's perhaps the same thing, different things in different localities. And the mechanism for ironing out those local mistakes or differences in nomenclature are, it's.
You know why it's much bigger? Because most of those plots, we don't have voucher at all. Without voucher, we can't have false vital signs, and then we can't compare. Without give the specimen, give the DNA, give the sample, we could easily, I think if you are building this database where we collect the tree, even though we apply different name, but having an opportunity to cross compare these data. But we don't have, for many those plots, they go and identify the plants with local people. The local people, they know quite a lot of those plants, but could have made mistakes, The voucher would help. There is this nice paper published by Tim Baker, talking colleague. He was also on this phrase in the colleague evolution paper, selling the idea that perhaps a voucher in point biology would be the unifying feature to link people working in ecology and people working in taxonomy. But even this is so complex because on one hand, curators, they don't want to receive those cracked specimens, some cracked specimens with only vegetative, psychology by ecologists, and no reproductive, but so it's complex that they are sometimes big, but we should be aware that many times these data, if they are collecting specimens from tree in a plot, the ecologists bring us with a specimen that comes from a precise areas, well, georeferences, precise, we can always go back there, even though it's sterile. Then in that paper, they show several examples of these data, these plots that all the facilities they've been encouraging to collect voucher and living there. That's the temporary identification. And then they've been going back to these plots where they've been collecting voucher, and they found one or another examples of new species of trees. So it helps. The first vegetative specimen help us taxonomists to fill in another gap taxonomy knowledge. So I think I'm convinced that without vouchers, I think we are building such a nice effort working on a network of plots across South America that the rainforest project is beautiful, but we need to encourage having vouchers.
Clearly, some of the other people working, doing their lists, had a different definition of tree than you did. So for instance, with Solanum becoming a major genus. So what was the definition you all used?
No, they had a definition of proper trees, but they didn't know if those names were a tree or not. They include liana, herbs, proper herbs. They were supposed to use their definition, but they were mining data, from GBI, and those points came to their definition. So our definition was pretty much the same as theirs.
Which is what?
Tree length of that can reach at least 3 meters tall. So of course, sometimes you collect a species that has the potential to be a tree, but mostly it's collected as a shrub. We use also as a tree. We also use in our techniques, but we didn't use liana, scandent trees. We use only trees. Our database, we build a much larger database, including the herbs too, because we already found each of these names. For trees, strictly trees, we found is that small number. We try you are filtering.
Do you agree with the earlier estimate from Pennington and others that 125 species account for more than half of the Amazon tree flora?
Yeah, I
think you showed the one paper where they said that so much of the biomass was so few species. Do you agree with that based upon your observations?
You mean, which slide? You mean the one?
There was a paper by 4 authors, including the 2 Penningtons, that talked about how few species contribute to over half of the total tree diversity, the total number of trees, I should say, in Amazon.
Oh, that's the size paper, the hyperdominance paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
As I said, I don't think we can that question, but I can tell you, I have found that I'm working on my games. I already see that at least 3 of those hyperdominant species, they've been misidentified in between large spread areas in the Amazon. Like Aldina, a heterophila, one of the genes I showed you were working on. These supposed to be hyperdominant with distribution in central Amazon and west Amazon. So they are different species. So, but they've been identified. There are other cases too. But as I said, people, Robert Brickley has made a big criticism on the approach on that Fisher's alpha estimation for a so physiologically diverse heterogeneous area like the Amazon, basically. So yeah, I don't have the physical or theoretical. I'm not ecologist. I don't have it. I realize I've seen that people that are working on estimates, they've been questioning. So I'm just quoting here that is a question with respect to that estimate. So it looks like, and from my perspective, going to the field, I can see many trees they are very dominant, but I'm not sure if I would agree that only those 227 species are big responsible for the entire Amazon. Based on my field experience, but that's not science, But on my perspective,
All right, well, maybe we should make us another hand here, and then if you want to meet with them, send me an email. It's the same as going to be around for another 10 days.
thank you. Some beers, they make me real, like mas namorada
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
well, whatever you, the world's fantasy. I think part of that. we can ask Anthony samples.
Done.